Welcome to RHI's Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today, we are joined by Michelle Kennedy, who serves as president and alternate governor of the Nashville Predators, bringing over 15 years of experience with the organization and a strong commitment to its growth and community involvement. She is only one of two NHL team women presidents and hopes her visibility shows young girls that hard work, education, and perseverance, not gender, define what's possible in sports leadership.
Well, hello, Michelle. Great to talk to you today. I'm so honored that you took the time to meet with me.
Hi, Jim. Very nice to meet you. I'm flattered that you sought me out to have this conversation.
Yeah, all right. Well, I know that you're in a very unique position, and but before we start, just a brief background of your history and then your current role.
Yeah, I grew up in a little bitty place in Kentucky, came to Vanderbilt as a women's basketball player, and it was during that time that I became intrigued with the business of sports and entertainment. That was in the late 80s, early 90s, very mom and popish. Even though it was an SEC athletic department, it was very small. And so I discerned that in order to bring value into an environment like that, I probably needed to go out and learn good business practices and bad business practices, and I did that through working at KPMG for about 5 years. So I audited financial statements in various different industries. And after just about 5 years, I decided I knew enough to be dangerous. And so around that time, it just so happened, life a lot of times is who you know and not what you know. Around that time, the gentleman who was the business manager in the athletic department at Vanderbilt, my alma mater, was leaving to start his own business. And that began my career in sports and entertainment. I did that for 7 years. And during that time, I often tell people I feel like I was practicing street law. We didn't have an in-house counsel at the athletic department at Vanderbilt, so I was decent at business issues, and so people brought legal issues to me. And after I was there for 7 years and I was starting to get headhunter calls about athletic director jobs, that just didn't feel like the next step for me. So at 34, with the responsibilities in life of a mortgage and a cat, I decided I was going to go to law school. And so I did that, and I went to Vanderbilt Law School for 3 years. Very odd time to be a student at odd time in life. It wasn't really age appropriate, but I did that for 3 years, and after that, landed at the Preds as their first ever in-house counsel. They were transitioning from a single owned one gentleman who owned the team to a whole group of owners, and that obviously comes with more governance and more things for an in-house attorney to do. So that was my that was my foray into the Preds world, and that was 18 years ago. And throughout that time, I was at first in-house counsel, then I was general counsel and CFO when owners did a reorganization and figured out what I refer to as my double disability. I'm both an accountant and a lawyer. And so I was CFO and general counsel for a number of years, then became COO, then took on the president role 2.5 or 3 years ago. So
Wow, what a
that's it.
journey. Yeah, what a journey you've been on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've obviously had to work through a lot of different challenges. So you really come from a sport. I mean, in terms of your basketball, and then obviously working with teams, and then eventually, moving on to this more formal role.
Right.
So uh, when you look at hockey as a sport, and when you look at what you're doing now with the Predators, in conversations with people, when you look at the evolution of Nashville, some of them say that it was bringing the Predators and then bringing the Titans, that really was a catalyst for some of the growth in Nashville's hospitality industry. So how do you see that kind of role that sports and large stadiums play in bringing a demand for more dining and entertainment options?
I think it's tremendous, and I think it's undeniable. So when I was here in college, again, late 80s, early 90s, I never came downtown. You did. Oh, well, I correct that. I only came downtown to watch night court. That was one of our recreational activities at Vanderbilt. We would go to night court and watch all that went on there. But that's the only reason I ever came downtown. It just wasn't a place you wanted to be. And
Mhm.
so you talked about the Titans and the Predators coming to town being a jumping off point, a springboard for what came after it. I very much believe that's the case. It was this building that we function out of right now, Bridgestone Arena. Phil Bredesen was the mayor that dreamed this dream. And people thought the man was crazy when he talked about building an arena in downtown Nashville because it just wasn't safe. It was not a family friendly place at all. Nothing good happened in downtown Nashville at that time. And Bill Bredesen had a vision, and that this arena was built, and it really is the it was the first thing that began the tremendous growth of downtown Nashville that's made it one of the most vibrant downtowns in all of the United States. So we were the impetus for all of that happened around it. I don't think without something as bold and visionary as our then mayor, who became the governor later, having a vision like that, I don't think we would be what we are today. And so I think it's building this building, finding a professional team to be its primary tenant, and at the same time, fortuitous or just a lot of great work by folks in Nashville, the Titans were coming. It made a tremendous difference. There's just a difference in a pro town and not a pro town. And now we had the Sounds all along, and they have great staying power, and that's a great thing to do to this day. But it just kicked things up a notch when the Titans came and when the Predators came, and then when Nashville SC, and I don't think that growth is finished. I think we will be home to hopefully a WNBA team at some point, maybe a Major League Baseball team at some point. I just think that the sky is the limit for Nashville. And I think that it used to be a pretty well-kept secret. It's not anymore. California and New York emptied during COVID and moved to everybody came to Nashville. So I think now Nashville is a very desirable destination. I think it has a lot to do with the pro sports scene. It also has a lot to do with the entertainment scene. It's just a great place to live, to work, to visit. So there are all those things, but then there's also the inherent friendliness that comes from being a big town in the South, where there's just a Southern hospitality that's undeniable.
Yeah, when I grew up, stadiums were often built in the exterior industrial area of a city, and it really was a destination with large parking lots that really weren't connected to the city in any significant way. So it was a destination opportunity. But that kind of, I know Pittsburgh, they built their downtown stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it pedestrian friendly. So in order to go to the game, you walk over a bridge. I mean,
Right.
you park downtown, but you walk over the bridge to get into the stadium. But then afterwards, you walk back downtown, and then it helps support the local hospitality businesses. I know San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco, the same thing,
Yeah.
when they built their stadium right on the water, and it really was in an area that not only had some tourism associated with it, but it was really close to Chinatown and downtown and
Mm-hmm.
everything else. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I in my lifetime, I've seen the evolution of stadiums as being standalone out in the middle of nowhere as a destination to being integrated into the downtown scene. But with that comes a lot of opportunities, but also some challenges with crowds and traffic and movement of people. And I know in a lot of ways there's a need to help support people in the community. And I know that the Predators has an initiative or a program that really gives back to the community, that helps the community. Can you talk a little bit about that community program that you work with? I don't know if you work with it specifically, but I know it's a part of your organization.
Absolutely. I love to talk about our foundation. So, we believe that it is our responsibility to be good community citizens. We have a Nashville Predators Foundation. I'm the chairman of that foundation. And we want to be as immersed in our community as we are in the NHL. We want our community to see us as a place that they can go to have fun, a place that they can go where it feels like family, it feels like we care about each other, it feels like we care about our citizens. I think some of that comes from, there are a couple things that I attribute that community commitment to. One is that from the beginning of our organization, our first coach, who is our current general manager, Barry Trotz, was very, very entrenched in philanthropic work, and he impressed that upon our players, and that began to permeate through our organization. The other thing is that in 2007, when Craig Leopold was selling the Predators, there was a gentleman in Canada who wanted to buy the Predators. And so he had a tentative business deal and he started publicizing season tickets being on sale in Hamilton, Ontario. And Nashville was furious. And, they said, you are not taking our team. And so the community, the citizens of Nashville rallied together and bought enough season tickets to compel a local group of owners to keep the team here. And so I think there's a connectivity that comes from that that's undeniable. I mean, we quite literally were saved by the people who live here, which gives us insatiable gratitude toward the community that we live in. And we have a mouthpiece and people listen. Whether you think people should listen to sports teams and sports personalities or not, they do. It's just factual.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have that mouthpiece and that megaphone, we very much believe that you should use it for good. You should use it for good things. When our community suffered from a tornado, we opened, and many people were without electricity. We opened this building and people came in to have lunch and just a warm place. We did the same thing in the recent ice storm. When there was a bombing on Christmas Day on 2nd Avenue, we were the first call that MNPD made to set up ground zero for all the different agencies who were going to come into town to investigate that tragedy. We just always want to be there for our community. And it's not like we sit around hoping for really awful things to happen so we can be heroes, but we want to be there for our community because our community's always been there for us. We can't do what we do without the support of our citizens. And we have an insatiable desire to reciprocate that support.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and I could understand why you're really proud of the work that you're doing. And obviously, sport actually creates a community, and people. I was just in Liverpool, and I went to the new what we call soccer stadium, their football stadium, and Liverpool's like obviously a big football city, and they have both the kind of the more the international team, and then they have more of a local kind of city team. And I went to the one for the city, and you could tell that there's just such a community that's built around
Mm-hmm.
sport. I mean, people, and when you have season ticket holders, I noticed that with the person I was with. I mean, he gets to know the people that are sitting around, and it's like it's almost like a social meeting place for people. And they may not socialize outside of that moment, but in that moment, they know each other, they talk to each other, they know each other's family, they know what they do. It's so sport and stadiums actually help to promote sociability in ways that are not often identified as achieving that goal. And then alternatively, for those people who can't get into the arena or the stadium, they build their relationships around pubs and bars and places where they gather just for the sake of that team. And I did some work in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I know in Washington, D.C., there's a bar that's dedicated to the football team in Nebraska. So it's like everybody who lives in Washington, D.C., who went to the University of Nebraska gets together in this
Yep.
bar to watch the Nebraska games. So
Yep.
sport is actually a facilitator of sociability. And one of the things, I noticed this when I went to the football game. I would say there was one woman out of maybe 15 in the crowd. It's a 50,000 seat stadium, and while they built the stadium, they didn't build the roads to get in there. So the taxis have to drop you off, and you have to walk. And it was raining, but there's just this mass crowd of people that walked to go to the game, and then the mass crowd leaving. But really, there was few women that were in that, and I think in some ways, many sports don't necessarily have a large women presence, and some sports in particular, like hockey, I would think may not necessarily have that large of a population, but perhaps I don't know. But you, as a woman and one of two women presidents for a hockey team, you obviously had to navigate your way into this position. So not only what are the challenges, but how does your perspective from being a woman influence how you're actually helping to build more women into the sport?
So I'll go back before I answer that question. I'll go back to your other point about the unifying effect of sports. I think sports is the great unifier. So we're going to have people sitting in this arena tonight cheering for the Predators who are who may not have another thing in the world in common, but they're going to sit in here tonight and be unified and clap and high five each other. I think that in a world where there's a lot of division and a lot of things that we openly don't agree on, this is a great place to be. Sport is a great place to be to have that unifying feel. So I just wanted to elaborate on that point that you made because I think it's a great point.
Yeah, well,
Um,
just on that point, there's an author that Ray Oldenburg. He wrote a book called The Great Good Place, and he talks about what evolved to be the term the third place. We have our home, we have our work, our school, and we have that place where we go. And you could have a doctor sitting next to a car mechanic and a
yeah,
Republican sitting next to a Democrat, but
that's right.
they all go into that pub or that third place, and they're also quite helpful. I was just with a friend who really buys into this notion. And he had somebody who needed his car fixed, and there was somebody there who was a mechanic, and they were able to barter. I'll fix your car if you come and paint my house. I mean,
Mhm.
so you have that kind of you set aside your political and
Right.
social and economic standard differences in
Yes.
that moment. And so that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You said it more eloquently than I did, but yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. I think it's a tremendous unifier.
Yeah.
Back to the woman in sports question. I don't. I think you're right. Right now, Jamie Faulkner with Blackhawks and I are the two folks in the league with this title. I don't often think about those things. The only reason that I think it matters is because I want 9-year-old Michelle Kennedy, 12-year-old Michelle Kennedy, little girls who don't often see people who look like them in these roles. I think it's really important for them to, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that that's what I always want people to hear me say. And I don't have a litany of hardships that I've overcome. I don't dispute that people in any industry, that mine or any others, probably have had those struggles. I feel very, very fortunate to have always been regarded as a diligent professional. And the fact that I am a woman is a defining characteristic, but it has never been anything that I feel like has gotten in the way. And I want other people to hear that. Not because I dispute that the other side of that story does exist. It does. Other people have dealt with tremendous struggles in various ways. But I think it's important to get my perspective out there because it doesn't always have to be that way. And it hasn't been that way for me. I've had a lot of great colleagues and allies and bosses and advocates in my career. And not once have I felt held back by being a woman. So I want young people to hear that perspective and to understand that while, yes, factually, the numbers are the numbers. There are fewer women doing what I do than men, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. That doesn't mean it's not accessible to you. I always say to people, I will always see myself as this kid who came from a town of 1,000 people in Kentucky. And small town Kentucky, the only advantage I had in life that I would say others probably didn't have the same advantage. I had excellent, excellent parents. I had wonderful parents who supported me in all the things that I did that were maybe not a traditional path. Other than that, I worked hard, I cared, I shot my shot, I did things that maybe didn't seem like they were achievable, but I believed in myself and made it happen. So, whatever it is that people think, cool job, cool title, all those kinds of things, but it's achievable. If I've done it, anybody seeing this, anybody out there can do it as well.
Well, that's quite inspirational. And obviously you have your little basketball approach to life, which is you got to take your shot. Even though you
Yeah.
don't always get the basket, at least you have to take the shot. I
Yep.
mean, a nice little sport metaphor to kind of summarize your career here and the success that you had. But I find it also quite inspirational that that's what you see yourself as is to show particularly young girls that if you have a good foundation, which I think parents and family are that foundation that most people need in order for success. But even if they don't, if they work hard, if they try, and they don't necessarily think of their gender as a barrier, but rather what education and experience do they need to achieve what they're going after, it seems to me that that's the tone that you're setting as an inspiration for others.
Well, that's certainly what I hope to do. I think you're very kind to identify those words as inspirational or me as inspirational, but I want others to see me and realize that I hope they think I'm a pretty nice person, pretty cool person, but not so special that I've done anything that you can't do.
Uh, so are you yelling and screaming and waving your hands at a hockey game type of person, or you just watch it?
I sit pretty calmly. Unless, I remember there are certain games in our history throughout the Stanley Cup run of 2017. There was a lot of jumping and high-fiving but I'm by and large pretty calm as an observer. Back when if you were to talk to my basketball coaches back in the day, I was not that way on the court. I was a little bit fiery and I would yell at myself a lot on the court. And so people always got amusement out of how I behaved on the court, but I've sort of toned it down over the years.
Well, this has been such a delight to meet you and to talk to you and to really feel your energy and your passion. I mean, it just comes through. I don't know why anybody wouldn't be surprised, inspired by you. So
Well,
I really take an opportunity to thank you for your busy schedule and taking time from me. So I
of
appreciate that.
course. Well, you are very, very kind. I've enjoyed meeting you. I look forward to the panel and to interacting with you again. And I've got a great job. I work in a great organization. Life's been good to me, and if that excitement comes through, it's genuine because I'm legitimately a very happy person who is glad that I get to do what I do and have the impact that I have on certain parts of our business and our community.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. You have a great day.
Okay, you too.